Well, thank you for joining us on this last panel on the health and wellness track, which is a new track here at Digital Hollywood. Digital Hollywood is a conference that's been around for about 2 decades, and we've been working on merging technology with media and figuring out what the business models are, what the content models are, what the advertising revenue generating models are surrounding that. So as we sit here today and we look at this media and wellness track at Digital Hollywood, we're going to be addressing it from the perspective of digital media, but also on this panel we have the breadth and wealth of knowledge, CEOs and founders of a variety of wellness companies that are looking at so many different areas of wellness. So if you have any particular set of interests, raise your hand and I'll be taking questions from the audience. So the first raise of hands, do we know if how many of you are content creators in media, health, wellness, and how many of you are in the technology business? Do we have any advertising? How about just health and wellness itself? Maybe not in digital media yet? Okay, good. So we have a good cross-section of people in the room. So let's start with our panelists. We have them coming from all over the world, but our first panelist is here in Los Angeles, and she's working on a very interesting, innovative way to treat alcoholism for women. Mm-hmm. And Claudia, why don't you tell them a little bit more about yourself and your background?
I've been an actress for over 30 years, and I'm a writer. And in 2013, I opened up the C3 Foundation, which is a nonprofit that helps people go on a treatment for AUD called the Sinclair Method or pharmacological extinction. It simply involves taking a FDA-approved drug called naltrexone an hour before you drink, and within a few months, it creates extinction and you no longer have the addiction. It has an 80% long-term success rate, far more successful than traditional treatment, and I am an advocate for it and have been on it since 2009.
Fascinating. Kate Nelligan reports on these kinds of breakthrough wellness processes through her company, and you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. Synergy TV is a company I founded when I saw a need for more uplifting and positive entertainment in the world. My background was at Lionsgate. I could not sell another horror movie. And I was getting my master's in spiritual psychology. So I created synergytvnetwork.com, which curates hundreds of uplifting videos. And we really connect personal development, wellness, and positive entertainment. And I'm also a life and career coach, primarily specializing in working with horses and humans on the ground in, again, personal development, which is my big love.
And Melissa is similarly in digital media for new mothers, which there's only a few around, I think.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm founder of Mommy. It's an app that provides on-demand personalized care and education to new mothers throughout the first year of their infant's life. We started this in 2014. It's been a long road. My family is in maternal health care, and I've partnered with my mom, who is a nationally recognized breastfeeding consultant and maternal health care specialist, who built many of the outpatient postpartum care programs at major hospitals here in Southern California. We saw that there were a lot of big gaps in telemedical care and in on-demand support when women get home from the hospital. And so with my background in operations and strategy from other tech companies, I left that and started building our own company.
Fantastic. And then Dr. Brugman, Doherty, she founded a company called Health Goes Female. How does Health Go Female? That's what we're discussing today, right?
Exactly, yeah. So 2 years ago, I was inspired with 2 of my colleagues who are also obstetrician gynecologists like I am, to found a website called Health Goes Female, and it presents credible information and for women of all walks of life, and we are discussing very relevant topics in obstetrics and gynecology, and we want to inspire women to lead a life in health and in beauty. Yeah.
Amazing. And then Holly Thompson started one of my favorite businesses, which discusses nutrition right now, which is probably on everyone's hot topic list.
I segued from corporate America. I was a vice president for Chanel Incorporated and went through my own health crisis and then came out the other side feeling that I had so much that I needed to share. And had I not gone through my own investigation into my own health issues, that I wouldn't be here today. So I founded hollythompson.com. I just launched a book this past year called Discover Your Nutritional Style. I am a blogger, a coach. I work with individuals and groups. I'm a speaker and do a lot of TV and media work as well.
And then Mallory Alexander is the author, speaker, and writer on happiness and a coach of happiness. So I want to hear about that, Mallory.
That's been fantastic. It grew organically out of the book. I had readers who were reaching out to me asking so many questions, and I hit a point where I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't have the bandwidth, and somebody asked, well, can I just hire you as my coach for this? And I started coaching with happiness clients. That's not my primary focus, but I love doing it, and it's fantastic and incredibly rewarding. I'm going to take a pause from my quick bio here because one of the most important things about wellness is to acknowledge you have a moment that you're stressed out and ameliorate it right away. And I'm extremely stressed out right now because I somehow switched my copy of this with someone else's, and mine has my notes in it. Oh, thank you.
And here's a happiness moment.
This is a moment of pure happiness, and I will give everybody a very important happiness tip. When you have a moment of pure happiness, if you can rattle off 5 things at that moment that are making you happy, you can imprint that happiness for a longer time. Our brains imprint negative messages 7 times more strongly than we imprint positive messages. So if we can force ourselves to imprint. So let me rattle off 5 things that are making me happy right now. I am extremely happy to be at Digital Hollywood. I am so happy there's a women's track because those panels have been phenomenal at this event. I am ecstatically happy to be on the panel with these women. We just all met for the first time, and I'm so inspired by what every single one of you does. I'm really happy I have a jacket behind me because suddenly the air conditioning is starting to hit me. And I'm happy that Mariana introduced me as an author, speaker, and coach because I'm also a former lawyer and investment banker, and often that's how the introduction starts, and I have to say no. And so many years ago, I transitioned from law and banking to being a screenwriter. I did that for 10 years. And then my union went on strike. And during that time, I committed the cardinal sin of turning 40. And that career suddenly stopped being as rewarding or as fun or as lucrative. And in the meantime, I was still so happy. And my husband one day said to me, how are you happy with all of the things going on? And I said, I don't know. It's not even my native language. And that actually spawned my first book, which is Happiness as a Second Language. And it comes from the idea that if you grew up in a house where everybody spoke Greek, you would naturally speak Greek. But if you grew up in a house where nobody spoke Greek, you wouldn't leave that house and just start thinking, well, I'm going to speak Greek now.
Right.
You would have to work at it. You'd have to learn it step by step. You'd have to retrain your brain so that happiness was your natural outcome. And
wouldn't that be nice if all of our brains are naturally speaking happiness soon? Politeness. So before we go on to define the wellness as we see it today, because there's so many aspects of it on the panel, isn't it interesting that all of you are high-powered executives, and this is maybe your second career or your passion? Like I teach yoga and fitness. That's my passion because I played sports in college, and I've never stopped, and I thought by this age I'd retire, but I haven't. How did you end up in this place? Maybe each one of you just kind of saying, how did you get here from, acting and being successful actress and having to, still maintain that?
I still do it. I still act and I still do voiceover and I still write books. But when I went on this treatment, I realized how well it worked for me and I wanted to share it with the world. So I called the person who wrote the book that saved my life, Dr. Roy Escapa, and I asked him what I could do. And he said, write your own book. You have a bunch of sci-fi fans out there. They'll buy it. So I did, and then I realized it was a visual society, and so I thought I better make a film. So I made a documentary using social media to raise the funds for it, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and fans. And so I raised the money to make that documentary, and then I opened the nonprofit because I realized this brings me more joy than any acting job I could ever get. When somebody sends you an email saying, "I've never seen my mother sober until now," I'm really getting to know her, a little 16-year-old. I mean, it's just, it breaks your heart and fills you with so much joy and happiness.
And it's fascinating.
Happiness. See? That's my happy zone, is when I can actually help somebody, and when you're changing lives, you're saving marriages, and it's a trickle-down effect through the generations. If you save a child, you're saving them from abuse, you're saving people's lives from car accidents, abuse, medical costs. I mean, it's so huge. Alcoholism is such a massive issue. 3.3 million people die every year. That's a person every 10 seconds. And it's one of the most ignored issues that we have, because addicts feel guilty and they are shamed. And I'm trying to remove that by saying, hey, I came out of the closet, so can you. Let's work on finding something that will actually help you. And that's my whole raison d'etre. That's the reason why I get up in the morning, and it's my chosen career, and I will do it until the day I die.
I love it. What passion, right? It's amazing. You want to do something that you feel that passionate about, Kate?
Yeah, it brings you joy and happiness.
That's similar for you, Kate?
Yeah, mine was really a paradigm shift. I just was leading what I would call a very typical LA lifestyle of being ego-driven and very interested in everything on the outside, but not feeling very fulfilled on the inside. And, getting a master's degree in spiritual psychology really wakes you up. And it did for me. And so I really started to live more from my heart, from being of service. My mentors have a book called Loyalty to Your Soul. That's really what it became for me. And I just saw a way to blend basically my expertise, something which is digital media and distribution and marketing, with what I'm passionate about, which is uplifting people, empowering people, inspiring people, and what the world needs, which is more media that reflects who we are and who we want to be in the world, not all of the violence and the crap that's out there. So it was something that I had to really choose what I was committing to. And it was really about who I was being in the world and where I was living from and what I was serving instead of my ego. And it's so easy to fall into that trap. And then with the horses, it's just been this natural, organic, amazing process, because I've loved them since I was a kid. And I love the platform of digital to help thousands, but I love the one-on-one of being a coach and seeing transformation in front of my eyes. I love that. So.
Fascinating stuff. Finding your path, right? Your dharma. Okay, so Melissa, how did you find your path from technology businesses, which are all about creating better world and more meritocracy, et cetera? So.
Yeah, well, I've kind of had a windy path. Technology is just a piece of it, although it's those are the kind of businesses that I was working in over the past 6 years. But this is my third company. My first I started when I was 15, and I just always had kind of that entrepreneurial bug to when I saw an idea or I saw an opportunity and I saw a way that I could help people, I would just try and research a bunch and get out there and just try something and not be afraid to fail along the way, because I knew that I kind of figure out a better way to help them if I didn't get it right the first time. The transition from, I was working primarily in social media and education technology companies in New York, and the way that I transitioned into women's wellness, and particularly into postpartum care, was through working with my mom, who's been in this space for 35 years. And I saw the impact that she was having on new mothers' lives, and the way that she communicated really was the key thing that was creating such a powerful and positive experience for new moms. She really brought it down to their level, came to where they were at. The way I think kind of academically to describe it would be like intersectional feminism, where you kind of you understand that woman's choices and her questions and her concerns and her personal health goals are situated at the intersection of all the things that make her who she is, and not trying to push any particular philosophy or clinical approach on her, but understand where she's coming from and then meet her there. And the biggest problem that I saw at that point in my life is that my mom was kind of getting to a retirement point, and I wanted her legacy to live on. So I rounded up a couple friends and I started working on digitizing her intellectual property. And then she mentioned by chance how her phone blows up with text messages all the time from patients asking questions all day and night. And I said, well, now I know what I can do with all of the digital content I just produced.
That's fascinating.
Wow.
What is your mom? Where is your mom now?
Well, she has a private practice called My Nursing Coach. It's a mobile in-home lactation consultation company. So it started out with just a hotline. Call in when you get home from the hospital, and we'll send a nurse out within 24 hours to do a 90-minute to 2-hour breastfeeding consultation with you and get you all set up, and then route that information back to the doctor so that there's actually continuum of care really happening, where doctors understand what happened to the patient once they were discharged. And it took off like wildfire, but it's not, it wasn't scalable. And that's where the digital media component came in.
Totally makes sense. What a great story. Dr. Brugman, I guess you're still in your field, right?
Yes.
You're just using digital tools to help many.
Exactly, that's absolutely correct. So yeah, I'm in the field of obstetrics, and I love this a lot. And I'm very passionate about educating my patients. And the problem is that you see then is that you can only help one patient at a time, because your time is limited to speak to your patient, and especially like young, as a first-time moms, so they have a lot of questions. So this was actually the inspiration for me and my colleagues then to create a website where we can distribute relevant information that is also coming from a credible source to many. That's exactly what it is.
And it's really needed. So Holly, my new best friend,
Yes,
why did you leave Chanel? I mean, now that I know you, I mean, really, tell us about
I
it.
know, that's the question I get most of all. Why, how could you ever leave Chanel? At the time, I mean, it was really the best job in the whole wide world if you're a girl who loves fashion and clothes, and I was. And at the time, I really felt called to something else, but I didn't know what that was. And my new husband was then living in Northern Virginia. His company was there. His young daughter was there. And so I found myself torn all the time. I alluded to this in my intro, but what happened was that instead of the answer of what are you going to do next coming to me, through my brain, it came from a process of going through some really poor health. And I had a lot of issues that came down on me right away, like chronic migraines, and, to the point where I was hospitalized, and allergic responses, and then infertility, and a series of miscarriages and hormonal imbalance. And the list goes on, and those led to some autoimmune issues, and really several years of wondering where that girl at Chanel went to. And I found that, what I finally had to do was to turn my back on all the different medications that were being given to me by each doctor that I would go to, and look to my food. I saw a nutritionist. I was given a series of, a lot of supplementation, which was great and helped to build my immunity, but no one could tell me what to eat and what the best way of eating was. And something in me knew that there was something in my food and in the way I was living my life. And so what I did was really took a hard look at my diet. It was never horrible. It was never fast food. I had always been a student of nutrition, but discovered that I had some food intolerances that were actually creating inflammation at a very basic level that had led over the years to this series of issues that I was dealing with. My big aha moment was when my then young child, who was by now 5 years old, was diagnosed with asthma. And after having been a healthy, robust little boy, he all of a sudden was sick all the time. And for an entire year, spent, caught everything that came through school, and had dark circles and could no longer run. And he ended up at a pediatric hospital in Washington, D.C. And I actually sat with my calendar and said to myself, what happened a year ago? Like, what happened? And I was thinking, you know, we live in a historic old farmhouse, and I'm thinking, maybe did we put in a filtration system or something in the air? Do we need to clear the air filters, or whatever it could possibly be, because it was this big mystery. And what I saw was that we had started a subscription to a local dairy, like a farmer, dear friend of mine actually, who was selling raw milk. It wasn't that the milk was raw, but my son was adopted from Russia. And if any of you are of Russian ancestry or Eastern European, you often have difficulties digesting dairy. And as I pulled him immediately off of the milk, because prior to that, he hadn't really wanted milk, pulled him immediately off. Within 6 weeks, we took him back to Georgetown. The doctor called me, and I will never forget this moment of, I was actually in a shoe store, and the doctor called me and said, you know, Mrs. Thompson, I need to tell you, whatever it is you're doing with your little boy, keep it up. Keep giving him those home remedies. Don't let anyone give your son any more asthma meds or pharmaceuticals, because what you are doing is working. And this was a traditional Western medical doctor who was actually the head of pediatrics there. So that to me was, you know, I mean, a huge changing point. And that was really what inspired me to go in the direction that I did, never anticipating what that reinvention would bring, you know, dreaming of maybe someday having a book to reach the masses, but, or having the platform that I do, but somehow it all evolved from that very basic desire to just share how my life and my son's life had been transformed.
Fascinating. So life has led us to this path. Valerie, what's led you to the path? I know you've been in corporate environments in Silicon Valley before coming down to Hollywood. What has led you to the path to define wellness and happiness in the workplace? I mean, that's kind of like not a place you always find a lot of happiness, right?
It's funny.
Am I right? Just asking.
Workplace happiness has become really important to me in that it's where we spend actually the majority of our time as adults. And there's enormous amounts of research now. In the last 20 years, the idea of wellness, of personal wellness and well-being and happiness has just come into academic research, but really in the last 5 years, it's exploded. And UC Riverside has an enormous study, ongoing study of happiness in the workplace. And they found that 76% of our happiness in our workplace is associated with what we feel we accomplish each day. And again, there are such simple things we can do. There's simple things the managers can do to make employees feel like they're accomplishing more. There are very simple things we can do for ourselves to make ourselves feel like we're accomplishing more in the workplace every day. And so that came a lot out of the coaching that I was doing. I talked to so many people where either they were artists or entrepreneurs, and they got to the end of every day saying, I did nothing today. I got nothing done today. And I'm like, surprisingly, you didn't get nothing done today. And so I started creating these methods for people to just simply acknowledge what they did each day in the most basic way. When you sit down at your desk, take out a Post-it note stack, write one thing that you're doing that day, one thing. It can be take out the trash. Do not make it revamp the marketing department. You are not doing it that day. But if you can write down one thing that you're doing that day, you tack it somewhere, and every time you look at it, you're like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'll do that. I'll be happy when I do that. And then when you do it, you move that note and you do your little happy dance. I did it. I got it done. And then you move it to somewhere else, and that's in your eye line for the rest of the day. You say, all right, I got that done. And that way you're not beating yourself up. You're not sitting there telling yourself, got nothing done today. It can be open the mail. It can be anything, but it forces your brain to acknowledge that you got something done. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's really important, especially for artists and entrepreneurs, but even for somebody working at a, cog twisting on an assembly line, you want to start and end your workday happy. And that starts with starting and ending your workday. How many people in here feel like they have days that they never end their workday? So now you have a Post-it note. that every time you looked at it, you're like, oh, got that done. I accomplished something. I didn't do nothing today. I got that done. And then when you leave the office, you know what you do with that note? And guess what that does?
Ends the day.
Ends the day.
You know, it's interesting because it's really a paradigm shift, right? What you're trying to implement here in a place where, you know, we also have like a persona. If you read New Age literature, and, you know, Kate, you probably can help me here a lot because I don't have a master's in spirituality, but, you know, you have this persona at work and you have this persona at home, and you say, my persona at work does X, Y, Z, but I'm really myself when I am home, right? And so that happens a lot. How do we shift? And, you know, you're all in the business of shifting paradigms and coordinate systems. How do we do that with Kate, with your programming, and then we'll go with Claudia too, because it's really about that.
Yeah, there's a film earlier today, Women in Film, The Mask We Live In, and I think that's for men and what they have to go through, and not showing emotion and that kind of thing. And I think a lot of it is about the masks that we wear and the personas that we take on, or who we think we have to be, or what we think we should do. I threw the word "should" out of my language a long time ago because I just don't think it helps. And I used to also say "have to" a lot. And really, my paradigm shift is now I get to. It's like, I get to do this. This is awesome. And it's, you know, it's really being in the present moment and gratitude. I mean, we hear this all the time, right? But I think what's important is to just, the world needs more people who are being themselves. And that means owning your gifts and accepting your weaknesses and, you know, being you, because you can see the passion up here, what everyone does and how everyone's unique and has their own way of working in the world and sharing their gifts. And every single one of you has that as well. So it's really about owning that and celebrating that. I didn't have big, deep spiritual conversations at the movie studio. It didn't happen. But I did have them. Can you imagine, right? But I did have them in the circles that I wanted to. And so sometimes it is about, but that said, people would come to me and I would be mentoring a lot of people because they knew that there was something that I could offer them. And so I ended up mentoring a ton of people, which then led to me coaching in many ways too. So it's really about just, you know, owning and sharing your gifts and doing your best to realize, like, why am I wearing a mask right now? What is the mask about? How is it keeping me safe? And if I was bold and I could take it off, actually, there's a great film on Synergy TV Network called Identity, and it's about this. It's about taking off a mask, and it's really a beautiful short fictional film if you want to check it out.
Sometimes the world gives us masks, right, Claudia? With like women in alcoholism, like they all are being treated a certain way, right?
But this is actually a really appropriate question for me because I recently experienced something that people who are not trained as professional counselors might experience, and that is when you are coaching people. I experienced burnout. I had given everybody that I'm coaching my home number, my cell phone number, my email address. They could text me, they could call me, and I was literally having 50 people a day. Hey, my husband didn't take the pill. My this and that. And I actually got burnt out. And it's almost like an energy vampire. And what I forgot to say was no. And I didn't know the word no. All I was doing all day long to the actual detriment of the rest of my life. I wasn't hiking, I wasn't swimming, I wasn't doing anything without my phone attached to the hip. I wasn't enjoying nature, I wasn't gardening, I wasn't taking 1 hour for myself, not 1 hour. I always was hooked in to something, phone, iPad, whatever, just worried about all these people out there constantly. And I think that you really have to take the time for your own personal wellness to stop and say, you know what, you can't call me at home anymore. It's not working for me. You email me, and when I'm ready, I will call you, or I will take the time. And I really had to, you're talking about work hours, which is such a brilliant thing. I really had to say, you know what, I'm only going to check email in the morning and once in the afternoon and evening, because I was turning into a complete addict. I mean, it would beep and I would immediately think somebody's going to die. And that was my responsibility. And that heaviness and that weight of all this responsibility for somebody who's not a clinical psychiatrist, I'm not trained, I'm just an empath, I'm a giver. And I really had to recently say, enough is enough. And you have to, you can't be healthy and you can't help people unless you're healthy and you're helping yourself. And saying no is one of the most powerful, important things a woman can do. Of just saying, you know what, that doesn't work for me. Sorry. You know what? Yeah. It was an unbelievable lesson for me recently, and I just literally crashed and burned, and I came out Phoenix rising from the ashes, stronger than ever and more responsible for myself and my own health and my own wellness. And now I can be better, a better coach, a better person, a better friend, a better daughter. So I think it's an incredibly valuable lesson. I know I twisted your question around to what I wanted to say.
No, I know you
but
did,
that's
but
part
that's
of being
okay.
an actress.
You just shifted a coordinate system.
It
No
was a
worries.
shift in paradigms, right?
Right, exactly. I like it. Good move. I want to ask audience what they want to hear because I have so many questions that I want to ask them. But what would you like to hear our panel discuss today? I'll just take one right now. Go ahead.
For 10 years, I've been toying with opening my own business, and I just have to find that creative idea to open my business. And I mean, I have my degree. I work at a reputable organization. I love what I do, and I'm like, I just want to open my business. So, like, how do you find that? That spark that will take you
Mallory.
to the next level.
I want to field this just because I'm going to defer to Mark Cuban. He has the best line I've ever heard about this. He says, people keep telling young people, follow your passion, follow your passion. He said, it's the worst advice ever. He said, follow your effort. He said, look back at the last 6 months at what you spent your time doing. He said, because that's what you want to be doing. And if you can look back at what you actually spend your time doing, where you give your energy freely already, then you have to put in the effort to figure out how to shape that into a revenue generating business that can sustain your life. But you already know what you want to do because it's what you're doing. So then you just have to figure out how to make that into a business for yourself. And I hope that's helpful.
And if you're related to this panel, I studied in business school with Mike Milken. He was my corporate finance professor. He gave us these plaques at the beginning of the class. We bid all our points to get into his class. It was like the most popular thing in UCLA that year. It said, doing good is good business. And this is way before sustainability. And, I'm kind of older. I've been through business school a few years back. And it was way before this whole rise in recognition that wellness and how we think and what masks we present to the world are relevant. And so if you don't have that passion in you today about what is it that you can make the world a better place with, you can partner up with people who have wonderful ideas and you can be the business person in it. So that's kind of what I've done in my career, is creating the businesses around it. And that's very valuable, and it's a game changer, just as is having a passion about a wellness project. Anyone else? Yeah.
I'm just speaking to transitioning into building your own business. I think a big mistake that I see, and I've been pulled by it myself and have to kind of course correct, is being driven by how can I make money doing something. Like the idea of having your own business. Well, you'd have a nonprofit if you weren't, concerned with money, right? It's a business because it's a revenue-driven operation. So it's really easy to get caught up in, well, I have this idea, but like, how can I make money doing this? Or who will pay for this? Or how much do I charge? And I think what Valerie said is spot on. I have issues with that as a millennial. I always follow my passion. Mark Cuban's quote, when I first read that, I was like, he's wrong. But he is right about, if you look at where you are spending your effort and where you are already giving of yourself, what you've done is you've actually identified a need. Because you wouldn't be doing that thing if it wasn't producing some sort of positive result, ideally for yourself and for others, right? Because you'd stop if it wasn't doing something for you. And people would say, stay away from me if they didn't need your help. So once you find that connection and you're doing something that is providing a mutually beneficial, positive experience, then down the line, you can figure out all the different ways to possibly make money doing that thing. There are so many more ways than you could possibly imagine when you first come up with your business idea. And I mean, our business is a perfect example of that, but I'll just tell you really quickly. You think of consumer healthcare, you think of on-demand services, it's the customer who's paying for something to be provided on demand. Well, so that makes sense. And we have a few different fee-for-service models and subscription models for moms who want, ongoing care for the first few months when they get home. But something that I completely missed, the effort that I was following from day one was helping my mom manage her own private practice. And I was just upset because I couldn't ever have dinner with her because, as Claudia mentioned, she was always on. She had her phone, she had her iPad, patients calling, patients, asking questions all the time. So I started coming up with solutions for her, saying, Mom, maybe we should find a better secure text messaging system for you. Maybe we should find a way to digitize your content, doing things to help my mom. What I didn't realize is that there's a lot of other people who need that help too. So when we launched, I'm thinking this is going to be a consumer-based business and moms will, new mothers will pay for the service. And what actually happened is practitioners came out of the woodworks and said, I will pay to have access to that. If you can help me manage my patient population, I will pay for that. So it's a perfect example. If I had gone in and said, this is going to be a consumer-facing business, I would have never found what we now have, which is a SaaS model in our company as well.
Which is software as a service.
Yes.
Thank you. Holly, you use a lot of different social media platforms. And how have they evolved over the last half a dozen years you've been doing this?
Well, I started out, I thought it was fun, 5 or 6 years ago. Somebody said, Facebook is like a party that just never ends. And, I was like, okay. And so I was an early adapter to Twitter. My Twitter handle is @nutrition, which I never really felt I deserved. I know, is that crazy? I felt like, Dr. Oz should have that, and somehow I do. But I just really I think they're fun. And, back when I started my company 5 or 6 years ago, Facebook was actually my primary source of generating revenue. I didn't have to advertise. I would just post something like, work with me one-on-one, or, hey, I'm offering this group class, or we're doing this series of meetings, so often, and here's the link. And my entire business has been digitized from the minute I started, so that my clients or anyone wanting to work with me can go to my site, sign up, pay there, go directly into my personal calendar and schedule their session. And then by the time that all happens, I see them appear and we talk. So Facebook was really my first. I see right now, I see a big change happening in social media. I think that Facebook is becoming crowded. I think that the entire nutrition, health, and wellness sphere is becoming so crowded. I think a lot of people are jumping into this space who want to kind of get in on it because it's an up and coming area, and it's a huge area, and it's a huge market. So we have huge companies and huge players that are offering, a lot of information. So what I'm trying to do in my world is to remain credible, to remain sort of a resource, to continue to be myself, so very much my own voice and who I am, and also gearing towards more into a lifestyle brand, because the one thing that I've discovered is it's what you put in your mouth is absolutely key in my world, but it's also the way you live your life. So I am on Pinterest. I am, as I said, on Twitter. Facebook is fun, definitely not as important as it was. Instagram is easy. I mean, Instagram, every day now I'm getting dozens and dozens of followers with very little effort. So Instagram is fun and it's fresh, and people love that because Facebook has become, I think, so calculated, where you have to actually pay now to have people listen to you. Right? It's crazy. Yeah. So I think it's, I just think it's a lot of fun. And I think that if you do have an online business, a web-based business, it's key. Marketing using social media is key.
So, Claudia, you come from the traditional media business, and then this is my previous question. Women are portrayed a certain way as they treat against alcoholism and other addictions. Yeah. What is this way?
It kills me. I even tried to start a talk at the Writers Guild, and they wouldn't allow me to, because every single film and television episode, when they have an alcoholic, they either go to AA or rehab. They don't even use baclofen. They don't use naltrexone, nalmefene. Nobody has a medical treatment, apparently, even though they're wildly successful and have been around since the 90s. It's always somebody in an AA meeting. I'm guilty, but I did Clean and Sober with Michael Keaton. I was in an AA meeting. I mean, it just seems like the media doesn't get it. I mean, why proliferate a treatment from the 30s? It works for some people, but the majority of people, it doesn't work for. So let's go, it's 2015, let's start bringing in, new content into film and television. If somebody has a drinking problem, put them on naltrexone, give them an implant, anything, antabuse, I don't care, something other than going to a swanky rehab and drinking wheatgrass. It's just so cliche. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to have this conversation. Once again, it's uncomfortable. It's embarrassing to people. And so what they do, writers in general just treat it as if it's just, an aside, as opposed to actually doing research and finding out how alcoholics are being treated today, not 10, 20 years ago. So it's a very interesting thing. Media is so strong. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I made a documentary, is because people will watch it. I have such an inclusive website. I'm on Facebook, 5 different pages, Pinterest, Twittering, I've got Google Plus pages. All of the information you need is there. But do people read it? No. They send you a question saying, do you have any doctors in Oklahoma? Well, gee, I've got to find a physician page. Why don't you look there? Because people are lazy. They're visual. So I make now videos, top 10 questions. That's my next goal, is to make the videos of the top 10 questions people ask and just make little short videos. Attention spans are like that of a gnat. I mean, they just don't exist anymore. So anything visual will help you so much. So that's why, interesting that you say about Instagram. I'm not on Instagram, but I should be, holding up signs with the answers to the questions. Seriously. I mean, social media has been amazing. We've raised funds through Facebook. It is getting more difficult now. They're taking away your likes for no reason, which is interesting. Right. But I've used all the crowdsourced funding. I mean, it's really a wonderful platform for any company. And I believe that whatever you can use specifically for yourself that works the best for what you're promoting, because I'm promoting a very, very specific thing, we have to be specific. It is an amazing thing. I mean, 30 years ago, I never would have been able to reach this many people. We're going up towards 1 million people, 500 people a day from all over the world, just hitting the sites, even after just one article. And the majority of people actually read the articles online. They don't buy actual magazines anymore. So of course, everything is digital.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And it's if you know how to utilize it, it's an incredibly beneficial tool.
And Kate, there is now digital media formats that actually could tell these wellness and lifestyle stories in a better way. What are those?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's just so many things. I never thought I would blog. I'm like, there's no way I will ever share a personal story to the public, ever. And I blog on the Huffington Post, and it's amazing because there's a great way to share about like things that I'm learning, because I'm a student of life, so I'm constantly absorbing everything like a sponge, and then I want to go out and teach it. And so, being able to blog or being able to share photos or videos and that kind of thing. I mean, there's so much out there now. And with video, I really feel like curating is great because it shows your credibility. And, our whole thing with the site is just, we want to be trusted as a place you can go and you're not going to see anything that's going to really disturb or upset you at all. You're going to feel better about being a human after you watch our content. So, there's just a lot of things that we can use now. And what's so great is that Wix and Squarespace have become so easy to use. There's so many digital tools out there that you can do anything so quickly. You can have a website up today. You can have all of your social pages are technically mini websites. And people always need content. So if you create great videos, send it to people and ask them to showcase it. Be your own publicist. I always say that all the time. Be your own publicist because people need content. Same thing with the blog sites. If you start to create content for yourself, to build yourself as an expert, send it to people. I just launched a horse site, and now it's like I'm going to all the places that are promoting animal welfare and wellness and sharing about it there because it's something that I think they're going to be interested in. And I know they need content. I know they're every day trying to put new stuff out. So.
I think the important thing also that's happening with social media is it's creating communities that otherwise would have never existed, and in a way that's really empowering wellness kind of beautifully. Among my friends from college, one of our classmates committed suicide 6 months ago, and his college roommate last week posted a beautiful long essay about that, but saying, I hadn't spoken to him in 20 years, and then I have to hear that he died by his own hand. So now I'm on Facebook. I never wanted to be on it, but I'm on it now because I will never let this happen again. I will never let someone I love go, not have me as a resource. So I want to see your pictures of your family. I want to know what's going on with you. But more importantly, I want to know when you're in trouble. And everybody who responded to that, there was a lot of this beautiful note, Dave, blah, blah, blah. But then there was here's when I was in trouble, and here's who came to my rescue. And all those people started coming on the threads. And then other people started talking about their own suicide attempts. And then it evolved into this kind of magnificent conversation about suicide and what drives people to that point and what resources they might have. And that would have never happened. This was among a group of people who all graduated from college 25 years ago. And we would have never had that conversation with each other. And
like in person.
In person. And yes, and the honesty that came out of it was really spectacular. And I'm seeing that in social media in a way, like when you say I was never going to blog, I was never going to share a personal story. I share stories in my books that my mother is saying, really, you want to tell people that? And I say, well, yes, because that is, A, it's honest, but B, it is the new paradigm that we don't hide from each other because we are all connected in this way that we've never been before in history. And I think it's kind of magical.
So if I take another question from the audience, want to make sure we're answering your questions as well. Okay, I have questions. No? If you were to define women's wellness today, and maybe each one of you, maybe start with Melissa because she starts kind of early on as they were born. How would you define women's wellness? What's the definition of it for you today?
Well, let's see. I mean, I think that the way that everyone has described today, the industry is in transition. As Holly touched on, there's a proliferation of these wellness platforms and resources and channels to discuss this, but it's still in kind of a commodified form, and it's going to take more of this kind of messaging getting out to the market to really help women make it part of their lives and their lifestyles, as Holly discussed. I think that a big part of it is for me, I would like to see more women get into the digital media space on the topic of wellness. It's not been led by women like the way that it is now, the way that we're seeing women leading these endeavors, actually creating the messaging and leading these companies, because we care differently for ourselves and for each other, and so that's a big part of like our companies. Primarily women. That's who's behind it. The nurses, the lactation consultants, the physical therapists, the nutritionists, and there are men too. But the feeling of what we do is really we have to monitor for what Claudia discussed, going above and beyond, and not saying no. And that is how, I would say not every woman, but that's how women operate. We extend ourselves, and so it kind of creates a different sort of
paradigm.
Company. Yeah, a different kind of paradigm.
And
but when you go there, you have the opportunity to really materialize like wellness as a lifestyle, not in just like, let me sell you a product that'll make you feel healthy or make you look healthy, but actually live healthier.
Well, so lifestyle marketing.
It's also personal responsibility nowadays because there's so much information out there that you have to be responsible for your wellness. You have to choose what's right for you because there's a plethora out there. I mean, we're coming from not that long ago a generation where women thought that the babies came out of the navels. And how many of you have your female relatives discussed menopause with you? I mean, these are all subjects that are still taboo in many, many circles and many societies, many different nationalities and religions and so forth. And, I mean, even me, I don't think my aunts or mother or anybody ever discussed anything like that. So now we have the information at hand. We can choose how we treat ourselves. We can choose how to treat ailments and wellness and being and happiness and everything. It's just up to you to stick to it. And that's, it's like the yo-yo dieting and all that. Everything comes at you at 20 different, speeds. Let's do the cabbage soup diet. Let's do this. Let's do that. You are the one responsible for it, and you have to know what works for you. And I think women's wellness, has a lot to do with with really taking responsibility for yourself and really also just protecting yourself, putting that little shield around you and saying, this is my life and I'm going to live it the best way I can.
And it's interesting, Dr. Bruman, you actually went beyond your practice to start this, but it's really more of a lifestyle wellness site than necessarily medical site.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, also I think I cannot agree more with you too, because I'm always amazed that we as women, our health is something so valuable and it's so precious, but we don't take good care of it. And that's really, it amazes me. And I'm doing a lot of scientific research studies, and we did one study where we asked women just if they knew what's inside them. Also their female genitalia, if they know where they are, what they do. And it was really amazing that there was not so much knowledge out there. And it's really, it's us, it's our bodies. And even if we don't know what is our anatomy, how can we know how to take care of it and how to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves from things like STDs and everything we can be exposed to. So this is why we felt the need that we have to get out there and start and work on it, because just to get information out there. And I think what's also important that there's a lot of information out there, it's a great benefit, but it's not always a blessing, because there's so much out there, and especially people write personal experiences, which is fantastic, but sometimes they are not true, and they are maybe one, and they are maybe one of a kind, or I think really we have to inspire more women to that they want to take care of themselves, and also provide the right information or websites that come from credible sources, so women can be empowered and make their decisions and the right decisions.
So we addressed the pharmaceutical industry a little bit earlier with Claudia and some of these points, and kind of a healthcare as a whole, maybe not providing everything we need. What about the food industry, Holly? What are they providing for us?
Big question.
Are they poisoning us, Holly?
Close the windows. I do think that we need to have more transparency in the food industry in America in particular. If you look to Europe, there are regulations in place, and there are things that are allowed in this country that would never be allowed in the EU. I think that in our government, the lobbyists have taken complete advantage of our government. I think we have key players from various food companies placed throughout our government that are swaying and money talks and swaying the way of the Food and Drug Administration and throughout the entire political scene in DC. So yeah, I think that it's a huge issue in America. I do think that we all have to be educated, that we all need to know why we need to eat organic, or where we should be eating organic, or which foods that we are not eating organic or can't find that way contain 75 different pesticide residues. And what does that do to our bodies? What does that do to a growing fetus, or what are the possible downsides of that? And a lot of it we don't know, because the use of pesticides in our country, for example, has grown so rapidly since the late 1960s, and they're increasing too because of resistance. So it's a huge loaded question that really deserves your attention, and that I've spent certainly a lot of time on and covered as much as I could in my book without getting too far into it. But I also just want to bring up one piece here when we talk about this idea of wellness, and I loved everyone's comments. I think a huge thing that all of us in this room need to do is listen to our inner guidance. There is so much information out there that I think it's crazy. If I weren't spending my time living in this space, I would be very confused, because one day something is great and the next day it's not. And that just keeps happening over and over, and it's been happening for years. You have a guidance system within you. And when you read something and it sounds too good to be true, it most likely is. When you have a guidance when it comes to what you eat every day. If you're eating something every day and every time you eat it, you are bloating or you feel horrible, or if you consistently never feel good, there's something going on. So, one of the key things that I like to talk about is that, turning inward and putting all that information through your own filter.
Yeah. Well,
the idea of listening to your own body is a lot of what we do with moms in our company, because it's amazing how far women get away from listening to their own body when the pressure of caring for a newborn becomes part of their life. And something that is not being addressed that I see in our market, that's just not being talked about as part of this experience for women. It's hard enough to listen to your body, whether there's someone else around that's asking for milk every 3 hours. But in addition to that, our customer base is primarily mid-30s, college-educated, mid-career professionals who are having their first child, who have been kick-ass women in all other parts of their lives. And the pressure of having the look, and that's what I'm saying about the commodifying of wellness, right? Being the rock star mom who's got all of the organic, diaper creams and, all 100% cotton diapers, and looking like she knows how to care for this infant, is so much pressure on just listening to her own body that sometimes we get questions in through the app, and I kind of like read it back and think, I wish I could just kind of send this back to her and say, read this again. You wrote the answer. You wrote the answer at the bottom. Should I do X, Y, and Z? I think I should do this. Just tell me if I should. Yeah, that was exactly what you're supposed to do. But it's so caught up, right, in the culture of the crazy pressure that we put on women. And that's why I would like to see us move away from the look and feel of being well, right, and being healthy and having our stuff together, to actually living a life where we are in tune and we do know how to take care of ourselves and not have to constantly seek outside validation for that.
So Valerie, I'm going to bring you back to this big question. It's always like looming on these panels. I can't not ask it. I mean, and every year I kind of get more and more desperate about, like, why can this happen? Like, we don't really have access to capital. We don't have access to, there was a glass ceiling panel nobody went to today. It was the only panel nobody attended, right? But yeah, we're hitting the glass ceiling, and that's why we're starting all these companies, right? How do we get to this point, and when is it going to change, and what is it in our brain that's a little bit different, and why are we here?
Wow.
Why are we here?
I'll take approximately 2.5 minutes to explain why human beings exist on the earth. Well, actually, you know what? I can answer this question very easily.
That's why I have you in the panel.
Yeah. Thank you, Mariana. All of human existence is about survival. Every single thing we do, the development of our brain is about survival. All of our evolution has been about survival. The reason when a baby like reaches and grabs the remote control, like they're reaching for everything, they finally wrap their little fingers around the remote control, what's the first thing they do with it? Yeah. Women always get that right. Because the first cognitive lesson we have in life is that food goes in the mouth. For the first 9 months of development, food came through the belly, and then within less than 5 minutes of life outside the womb, we learn that food goes in the mouth. And so we're constantly putting things in our mouth. Is this food? Is this food? Because that's how we survived. And our brains developed certain instincts. So, I was talking about why do we imprint negative messages 7 times more strongly than we imprint positive messages? Well, everyone in this room is a descendant of a human being who first walked on this earth. And whether you believe that was 2 million years ago or whether you believe that was 6,000 years ago, you are still a descendant of a human being who walked on this earth. So if you had the chance to go back in time and choose your own ancestor, who would you choose? The guy who always remembered, oh, that berry is delicious, or the guy who always remembered, oh, that berry is poisonous? We hold ourselves to these ridiculous happiness standards when we are literally programmed for survival, and happiness is not an element of survival. And that's why we have to program our own brains for that. It also, when we talk about listening to instinct, if my dog walked in a room and it didn't feel right, she'd just get the hell out. She'd turn around and leave. She doesn't care whose feelings she hurts. She doesn't care what judgments she's making. And women have been so conditioned. I'm going to ask this question, and I will be honest that I had an incident in my life where I walked into a situation, knew I wasn't in that situation, shouldn't have been in that situation, didn't feel like I could just turn around and walk out. And I came very close to being a victim of a very violent act. Thank God there was an interference moment in time. How many women have been in a situation where you knew you shouldn't have been there and you didn't just turn around and walk out? Yeah, we have been conditioned to ignore our own instincts, and that's okay. One of the things I try to talk about with happiness all the time is we have this whole happiness movement in this country that I think is making it ridiculously hard. It's making it way too hard. I read an article called 18 Rules of Happiness. So lose the rules, first off. But second, one of them was don't have negative thoughts. I'll work on that. Allow yourself to be a human being first. Allow yourself to look at what, there's the hierarchy of need. I can't remember. Masry, is that the? Maslow's. I cannot, for some reason, I have a friend named Adam Masry, and I cannot make that name not be attached. If you are sitting there saying, I don't know how to feed my children, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay my rent, I think I might be getting laid off from my job, and then someone says, you're supposed to be happy. That's a very high standard to meet. But the flip side is you can be happy regardless of your circumstances. It's a matter of training your brain to say, okay, let me find the things in this moment that can make me happy. Or, let me allow myself a little wallowing for a little while. That's okay too. I don't know how new mothers are doing. Motherhood has become the vortex of judgment in this country in a way that I can't fathom, and I don't think that ever has been before. And we all need to back off ourselves. If the whole world is telling you you're supposed to be happy, you're supposed to be a perfect mother, you're supposed to, only eat organic, you're supposed to do this and this. All of those things are right, but wow, back off yourself and give yourself a break. I know Mariana is asking about the male and female brain. Again, all of human existence is about survival. 2 million years ago, we started living in tribes, and our survival depended on our role within that tribe. The survival of the tribe depended on the survival of the women. If the men went off and fought in a war and only one came back, he could repopulate the whole tribe happily. But so when we separated our tasks to ensure the women survived, we let the men go do what was going to bring about instant death, which was hunting and combat, and we left the women to do absolutely everything else. Every single other task was performed by women. And that was 2 million years ago. And since then, our brains have tripled in size and added the prefrontal cortex. We added the section that controls our emotions and our decision making. And so that evolution meant that the men who were most likely to survive were the ones who excelled at hunting and combat. So they could make quick decisions, they were aggressive, they were competitive, they could shut their brains down when it wasn't in use. Survival trait, keep that in mind when he's sitting next to you on the couch and you want to ask, what are you thinking? But our brains evolved for consensus building and group dynamics and multitasking and all kinds of things that aren't rewarded
In this society.
in this society.
Okay.
And so what we need to do is reward those things among ourselves. And then we need to find out how to get rewarded in our workplace. It's not as hard as it would seem. Make a quick decision and say it confidently. You're probably right. So don't wait till you're 100% right to make the decision.
And you have to be direct about it.
Be direct. Take credit. If you have something to say, don't say, does everyone agree? No.
What do you think?
Don't you think? I might be wrong, but no. Instead you say, here's what I think.
Correct me as I say something wrong.
Exactly. Or a really good thing is, I've researched this, and this is what I think we need to do, and I'd like us to discuss it before we move on. If you start your statement with that way, even if they discuss it, and then 2 minutes later a man makes the exact same comment, now that everyone's discussed it, you get credit. Get credit. Get credit for your work. Don't step outside the hierarchy. Don't be helpful. Be harmless. Don't do somebody else's job for them if their job is beneath you on the totem pole. There's all kinds of very small changes women can make that don't require behaving like men. We don't have to behave like men. We just have to behave in a way that gets us rewarded in our workplaces. But we absolutely have to support other women. And we have to acknowledge when another woman is struggling, when another woman, in the book, How Women Can Succeed Despite Having Female Brains, I have the analogy between German Shepherds and Golden Retrievers. And what happens is, if you're at a table full of German Shepherds, you're the only Golden Retriever, you sit there thinking, oh, hope they don't notice I'm a Golden Retriever. And then another Golden Retriever shows up. And you're like, they're going to notice I'm a Golden Retriever. And that's where we have to focus on filling all the seats with Golden Retrievers.
That's what we're close to, and maybe hopefully all these new businesses we're starting that can become major players and publicly traded companies eventually, right? That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Can change that. Yes. Hi.
Because there's only 5 minutes if I get one question. Does anybody have any feelings on sugar and background? Because I read a book 15 years ago that changed my life called Lick the Sugar Habit. And I've been off of sugar for 15 years, all processed, everything. The only time I have it is if I have a glass of wine or an apple or some fruit. But it totally changed me and my
So the
son.
question is sugar. Let's go.
Yeah.
I think it's the devil.
It is,
Oh.
yeah.
Yes, I do. I think in everyone, it creates inflammation. And my doctor friend, my new best friend here can concur with this, but the root cause we are finding of most disease today is inflammation. So if you would like to avoid that, get the sugar out of your diet.
What about maple syrup?
Yeah, that's what I use.
Yeah, Claudia.
Come on, it's
And
natural.
honey.
Yeah, I think honey is. There's something called the glycemic index that makes a lot of sense, and if you refer to that for your sweeteners, I think it's a very good tool. Honey has some fantastic benefits. I actually had an 87-year-old man ask me the other day, "Do you think I should remove the honey from my diet?" And I said, and he's actually the husband to the raw milk lady, but I said, well, how much are you eating? And I'm thinking it's a new habit. And he said, well, for about the past 30 years, I've had a tablespoon every day in my tea. And he rides horses, and I'm like, don't lose the honey. Keep the honey in your diet. I think maple syrup is great. I think it's a terrific substitute. I'm a big fan of natural stevia. You get a little bit of sweetness without, affecting your glycemic index. I avoid the pink, blue, and yellow packets. How about that?
Yeah.
So I'll take a few more questions. I know it's 5, but we'll go a little longer. It's the last panel. So let's go, Jeanette.
I just wanted to mention, Claudia, I met somebody in the last health panel named Sandra Buffington from the Global Media Center at UCLA.
Sandra Buffington?
Uh-huh.
And what is she?
What she does is she influences, the Global Media Center influences storylines on television and movies about health issues.
Global
Media Center.
Media
And
Center.
Victor actually told me that he searched UCLA to find
Sandra
her.
Buffington.
Yeah.
It's actually Sandra Buffington
UCLA.
DeCastro. Her last name is, DeCastro.
But she seems like a great person to talk to
About getting this
Yeah.
change. Yeah, thank you.
And my follow-on question is about shame, which is something that you talked about. How do we help people without introducing shame? I mean, I think that's really a challenge a lot of times because we want to give advice, but people are in different places, and I think sometimes when people's shame reflex comes up, then they're less receptive. So I just wanted to hear you guys.
Shame is also a huge trigger.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say to an alcoholic, you know, you're disgusting when you drink, they want to go have a drink. I mean, it's really a trigger for any addict. You know, somebody says, God, are you stoned again? You know, I want to go get stoned again. I mean, it's just for an addict, it's a trigger. For a food addict, it's a trigger. You know, oh, you're going to eat all that? Yes, I am, because you just triggered me. You know, I mean, and the shame of it is something that I think any high profile person or any girl next door, or boy next door, whatever, who comes out on a blog or whatever, or I wish more celebrities would come out with their issues, whether they were food addicts or alcohol addicts or whatever, drug addicts. I wish they would come out and say, you know, I'm not feeling shame. I didn't ask to become an addict. I wasn't born this way. It's a learned behavior. You have the genetic predisposition and then you engage in the behavior, and that's how you become an addict. And it shouldn't be shameful. And, you know, the more people who talk about it, you were talking about conversations and how important it is now, especially since everybody's in touch, suicide, all this stuff. There should not be shame in a suicide attempt. There should be a conversation about it. Yeah. And all of these things require conversation. And that's why I think the more people who come out of the closet, look what's happened with homosexuality in the past 20 years. I mean, the more people, it's now so powerful, and people have so much more power, personal power, and they're not in fear of coming out of the closet. I mean, things change, and I think it's going to change through every aspect. And social media and digital media is a huge, huge influence in that. We can reach each other. And the more we talk about it, the more it's normal, the less whispering is going to go on. Oh, you know, she has a drinking problem. You know, less of that kind of shame, that pointing the finger at, or you have to really watch your words. And I want to get back to something you said about women supporting each other. I know we don't have much time, but, you know, it's so sad. I talk to so many women, they say, you know, I mostly have male friends because my women friends are so bitchy or they're so competitive. What are we doing to each other? We should be loving each other and holding each other up and supporting each other's companies and calling each other and sending each other positive affirmation every day. I think it's BS that we're sitting here saying, I only hang out with men because, you know, especially in my industry, you know, thank God I'm not 20 anymore, because then it was really competitive. But I mean, now at least it's chilling out in the acting field a little bit, but still women aren't being nice to each other. Just be nice to each other.
And I want to say something about shame also that I'm just going to go ahead and reveal. I did 4 years of IVF. It resulted in one pregnancy that didn't go to term. And I never talked about that publicly. I was so embarrassed. First off, I felt like a failure as a woman because I could never become a mother and all these other things. And I'm not really public about it, but I finally started telling my friends who were my age and didn't have children. And I would say, are you at all going through this? Because then we all started talking about it because we stopped feeling like we had to hide it from each other. And I will share with you, there are 2 little girls that exist in the world today because their mother's doctor was doing something wrong, and I knew after what I'd gone through that it shouldn't be done that way. And I was telling her, no, you have to tell your doctor to do this. And she would tell the doctor, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a better idea. And those are the kind of conversations. I'm telling you, when I was 30, I went to an OBGYN who was a friend. He had a business and I was his consultant. And I said, I'm 30, I haven't yet had kids. And he thought I was talking about Down syndrome, and he gave me all this advice about folic acid and blah, blah, blah. God, I wish he just said, freeze your eggs. And these are conversations we don't have. And I taught at Berkeley Law in 2010, and let me tell you, it doesn't go over big at Berkeley. If you start telling the female students in the room, you don't have as much time as you think. And one of the women asked me, she's like, well, our firm has an egg freezing policy. I think that's ridiculous. I said, really? I think it's the best thing your firm could ever do for you. When I was 26 years old and I was practicing law, if someone in my firm had said, hey, we'll pay for it if you want to freeze your eggs. Oh my God, that would have been the greatest thing that could have happened to me. And I'm telling everyone right now, if you're under the age of 35 and you think someday you might want to have children and you are not in the relationship that you want to be, freeze your eggs. I'm telling everyone, there are natural methods. I only did natural IVF. There's a natural IVF center in Irvine, California, that will do natural extraction, which means without the fertility drugs, and freeze those eggs if you want to have children someday. That's
yes.
I'm a fan of affirmations. I'm a fan of things like I believe words are very powerful. And something my mother told me when I was really young was circumstances don't matter, what you're being matters. And that when she said that to me, it was like a light bulb went on, and I just like saw the world differently. And I'm curious, do you guys have any of those that someone has maybe shared with you that you kind of keep close to your heart that kind of helps you get through the day?
Yes,
Or-
keep a journal of the ones that come to you, and you can read. I have literally a journal of hundreds, and you can read them in the morning. Or the one thing I always teach people is to pair. So affirmations are things that come to you that feel like that they fit for you, the words that fit for you, right? And Louise Hay is like the best teacher of affirmations that I found. She has a book, You Can Heal Your Life. That was the very first wellness book that actually put me on my path. I was an atheist before that book, and it's crazy how much it's changed my life. So I highly recommend it. But I would pair basically drying my hair with affirmations in front of the mirror, and they're powerful in front of the mirror. So when you want to create a new habit, pair it with something that you're already doing, and that way also like gratitude to just, you know, anytime you walk through a door, you can say an affirmation when you put your hand literally on. It's a way that the brain starts to actually create a new habit. So yeah, affirmations are great. But, you know, there's also, you know, there's a lot of brain research about what goes on in subconscious and unconscious. And if we don't believe and buy into things, it can really sabotage us as well. So you have to kind of do it from both sides, I think, you know, and you have to go as deep as you can to clear and not be afraid of shame. Because I always say, don't put don't put chocolate on crap. It's like you can't, because there's still going to be, right? So affirmations have to really hit. You have to feel them, not just say them. But it is rewiring, and rewiring is huge. You know,
I think the most important thing is to be thankful. Gratitude is huge. I find a lot of people like watch The Secret, and suddenly they go, "I want a house. I want a big house and a swimming pool and a Mercedes." Damn it, you know, that's you know, I mean, it's you should be thankful. I always say in sort of a meditation, thank you for bringing people into my life who can help me help others. That's my affirmation. And yeah, and that is it's helped me enormously. People come from out of nowhere to help me with my nonprofit. And it's just every day I say that many times. And I have a funny one, not so funny, but I had a lot of car accidents, and I went into a meditation center, and the woman said, out of the blue, she said, well, next time you get in your car, I didn't tell her I had like tons of accidents. She said, say, I am safe and protected. So now every time I get in my car, I say, and I've never had another accident. Swear to God. Seriously. So those are my two, and they really, really work. So if you want to help people or whatever you want to do, thank you for bringing people into my life who can help me do X, Y, Z. And that's it's not, you're not saying, give me that Rolls Royce. Give me a husband, stat.
For me, it's the phrase, I'm a happy person. And I say it when I wake up in the morning. I say it before I go to bed at night.
I missed it.
I'm a happy person.
Oh.
And it has three virtues. If you say it every morning when you wake up, it raises your baseline, because it doesn't have to be true when you say it, but saying it gets it closer to being true. So every time you wake up in the morning, you just say, I'm a happy person. As soon as you open your eyes, it starts to raise that baseline. But it has two other advantages. It's a signal booster. It's like I said, when you have that naturally happy moment, when something great just happened, you say, ooh, I'm a happy person. It reinforces that happy signal. It smooths out that neural pathway and makes it a little deeper. For me, the biggest use of it is it's a signal disruptor, because it's when, the person in front of you in the drive-through is fumbling for their change, and you're 20 minutes late, and you're super angry, and you feel yourself spiraling out of control. If you stop and say, I'm a happy person, it can diffuse that. If this is your baseline and you start to say, I'm a happy person, it stops you there. It does not put you back there, but it sure stops you there, which means you don't go there. It's a lot harder to get from here back to there than from there back to there. Or if you're balled up in grief because you lost a child and you can't get out of bed, and you say it 20 or 30 times to yourself, it can remind you what you are going through will pass. And when it passes, you will go back to being a happy person, because it will not have defeated you.
And so with that, I want to thank everyone who stayed with us for these extra 10 minutes, including our crew in the back before, as we take you away from the happy hour. Join us by the pool for the reception. I want to thank our panelists for that really great, insightful info. Really good job.